Hello and welcome back to the Exist Better YouTube channel. Today it is only 2:30 here, but it's super dark out, so I just put a lamp on. I want to just have like a more of a relaxing video where I just talk about some stuff. And if you're wondering like what my ultimate blind spot in life is, this is it, guys. Cat's out of the bag. I'm not going to pretend to be perfect anymore. I'm completely addicted to these things and I cannot stop drinking them to save my life. So that's where I'm at. If you're ever wondering, what's her shadow? That's it. It's this stuff. It's this frozen, sugary, caffeinated nonsense that's slowly killing me. Anyway, I wanted to talk about this topic that is super triggering everyone, and I'm gonna lean toward the side of I might get censored, so I'm gonna try to use different words and misspell things. So I'm gonna talk about the dynamics of this situation, each side. I have not shared a lot of my perspective because I feel like the topic is so polarizing. I didn't want people who followed my work, who were on the other side of the war, to feel like they had to stop watching my channel, or like they had to, like, I didn't want them to feel like I was like rejecting them, because that couldn't be further from the truth. You can watch my channel and be my friend no matter what you do or think, period, because I value individuals. I was thinking about how people have the right to be wrong, you know, because it's that people have the right to learn. So everyone is so busy trying to figure out, you know, are the people who want the thing, I'm mimicking so I don't have to say the word, do the people who want it, are they right? Or the people who don't want it, are they right? And it's like, first of all, objective truth is basically like non-existent at this point. Everything is subjective truth. A lot of people are heavily resisting that, but that's, you know, that's where we're at. For every research study you find that validates one thing, you can find another research study that completely invalidates it. I don't think that believing science is what we need to, something that people can rest on. I think beliefs are a personal thing. I think they're a spiritual thing, a religious thing. I don't think that belief should be a science thing. I don't think belief and science should go together. Like, when you have a belief, that means that something isn't proven. Like, it can't be proven, right? Like, if I have a belief that everyone hates me or everyone likes me, like, I can't prove that objectively. That's why it's a belief. It seems like people are trying to replace their personal belief system with things that other people are telling them, which is dangerous territory by itself, right? It's not really how you want to live. You want to have your own belief system based on your own personal findings of what you've seen in life, right? So it's like, it's basically, to me, the whole believe science thing is about eliminating the internal compass and the intuition and replacing it with what some guy in a lab coat said. I've talked to people who worked in scientific fields, and they've told me that the corruption is unbelievable. You know, like, if you want to publish a study that says one thing, you know, if your colleagues like that idea, they'll publish it. And if you want to challenge the idea, basically, like, you will get fired. On top of that, everyone now can fund their own research to prove that they are good. One of the first videos I ever made, it was called The Limitations of Science. There's a lot of controversial ideas in that video, talking about basically how intuition exists outside of the scientific method, and how that ruffles everyone's feathers. Everything that can't be explained in logic, we've tried to take that and use the scientific method to debunk it, you know? Like I think I had a video where I talk about debunking and the adorableness that is debunking, because it's the idea that you can take esoteric things and, you know, things like really intuition is the word I want to use, like really non-linear feminine type of phenomenon, whatever you want to call it, and funnel that through a little man-made logical process, when in reality the only reason that logical process is allowed to exist is because of, you know, what intuition then has created. Does that make sense? I know that's like a really vague thing to say, but it's like we have it backwards. Part of the reason I was so hesitant to talk about all of this is that I do see dysfunction on both sides. I think it's fairly clear to see how people trying to force people to do certain things with their bodies is abusive, pathological, particularly when those things have proven to be very, very questionable as far as what are they actually doing to the body. When you're forcing people and trying to control people, you're afraid. People like to talk about government and world leaders and all these people like we're all such victims of them. And honestly, that perspective just annoys the shit out of me, because it's like controllers, people who are controllers are terrified. That's what that's about. That's why Dr. Hawkins wrote Power versus Force, to talk about the early stages of human consciousness, which we're all still in. It's all about force. And then once we hit a breakthrough, we hit a barrier where we break through, we move into power. So it's power and force are opposites. So people who are forcing are very out of power. And it's like confusing, because it's like, well, they're making all the rules and they have all the money and, you know, they can like fly a jet plane around and all this dumb shit. But it's like, none of that's power though. So I think it's easy to see the dysfunction there with people trying to control other people, force them to put things in their body, etc. But the dysfunction on the other side, I feel like not a lot of people notice. So let's talk about that for a second. What is the dysfunction on the other side? The people who are all, you know, calling everybody sheeple and you're trapped in the matrix and you're, you know, like I'm conscious and aware and sovereign, and like you're all just a bunch of like lesser thans, like that whole perspective. It's like these people are shooting up on their own self-righteousness. Like it's hard to watch after a while, because it's like, Jesus Christ, like we get it, you're one of the smart ones who hasn't gotten the shot. So why am I talking about all of this? I was thinking earlier about that quote that I mention a lot by Carl Jung, and it's the "I'd rather be whole than good" quote. And I've been noticing that I have been trying to be good by distancing myself from this whole thing. And so I was like, you know what? I'll just share exactly what I think and how I feel, because I'd rather be whole than good. Like that is what I'm trying to live by, so I might as well do it. Basically, I believe in self-responsibility. Individuals have power over their lives, they shape their lives, and yes, there are other things that can come in, like, and kind of sideswipe you that you weren't expecting, for sure. But for the most part, I believe in self-responsibility. I believe in self-definition you defining what is true and what is false and who you are not. And that obviously applies to emotional stuff, mental health stuff. That's mostly what I talk about here. But it also applies to health stuff. And this is not just a belief that I have, it's been my experience. You know, I've experienced personally how traumatic stuff has impacted my health. So, for example, when I was young, I always would lose my voice. I would always get colds and sinus issues, and I would lose my voice. I wouldn't be able to talk. At least once a year this would happen, all through grade school. I can now see, clear as day, looking back on that I don't think that I had necessarily a weak immune system. I mean, I may have had a weak immune system, but by no stretch was that the whole of what was going on. It's just clear as day to me now, knowing everything that I know, that the losing of the voice was a manifestation of my life experience. I could not speak because I was in a freeze state all the time in grade school. I could not speak. I would just, even when I wasn't sick, I could not get it out. So when I was little, I would get colds and flus constantly. I was like sick pretty much nonstop. And then I grew out of that, and I would notice that I would only get sick when I would stop taking care of myself. So when I was in my 20s, I would drink too much, and I would know without fail the next day I was going to wake up with a cold or a flu, whatever you want to call it. Usually it wasn't that bad, but it was cold symptoms, you know. And so I stopped drinking, and I never got sick again. And that was 5 years ago. And I've since been around people who were sick. I have not been just like hiding inside the whole time. So I understand how triggering this is going to be for certain people who are not down with this and they're gonna freak out. But this has been my life experience. So, you know, if someone else is experiencing being out of control and having no control over their health, that does not mean that that is the truth of reality and that someone else needs to begin managing your health for you, or that they can. Just the idea that someone else can manage your health, I think, is super dangerous. So, especially someone who doesn't know you, doesn't care about you, just wants to make some money off of you, is tired and burnt out, and is not healthy themselves. A lot of people will say that's a dangerous idea because people like me go out there and get everyone else sick. Again, I have never experienced that since I began taking care of myself. I'm like anyone else, you know, like I have my junk food and I've got my little addictions that I'm working with. But I eat a lot of natural food, you know, I get a lot of nutrients. I drink green juice sometimes. I get some exercise. Like I'm average, you know, decently healthy. And for someone who's been so health conscious for a long time now, for someone to tell me that I am unsafe if I don't get an experimental, unknown concoction of chemicals shot into my body over and over and over again, is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. And there's no way in hell it's ever gonna happen. There's no situation that would come up in real life that I could imagine where someone's going to convince me that I am unsafe all of a sudden and I need a chemical concoction of unknown materials that are heavily debated, heavily controversial, under-researched. Some of the research is funded by the people who are making millions of dollars off of it, that I need to shoot that into my body or I'm physically unsafe. That's not true. We do play a role in our health. It's not completely at random. It's not that you walk past someone and they cough, and if it hits you at the right angle, you're gonna die. Life is not that simple. We desperately want it to be, but it's not. It's about your physical composition. It's about what you are vulnerable to. And what you are vulnerable to is connected to your own blind spots, your own traumatic patterns. Like I was talking about, I don't get laryngitis anymore, but at that time I would get it constantly because it was the thing that I was going through. I was not able to voice my thoughts, feelings. I was not able to stand up for myself in any way, and I literally had no voice at that time. And so I think a lot of the people on this freedom side of the argument, they know that they're probably not the ones who are vulnerable to this. They know that they would probably be better without it. So, now do I think that applies to everyone? Not necessarily. I think it is possible that there might be a situation where someone is better off with it. I think that's possible. I don't know. So that's why I would never tell anyone else what they should do, because they might be in a very different mental, emotional, and physical experience than me. This is what being an individual is about. It's the reality that not all things are good for all people in the same exact way. It's not about feeling like you're a god or being delusional or pretending that you're invincible. That's another awesome thing that people like to say is, you know, young people these days, they think they're invincible, or these people who don't want to get shots, they just don't understand the risks. And it's not any of that. As someone who's experienced gaslighting my entire life, I've never seen a bigger gaslight than that first day where I saw, that's my dog, that first day when I saw them talking about this stuff on the news last year. I think that is why people have such a difficult time wrapping their head around why people want freedom instead of safety. It's that, one, you can have both. They don't know that. And two, they don't understand that there's a gaslight happening. I mean, the gaslight is this. The gaslight is there's a health crisis, and all of these leaders are coming in to help you be safe in that health crisis. And then what's actually happening is some version of there's some sort of health crisis happening. No one quite understands what's really going on. And there's a bunch of leaders who had a strategy planned already from years earlier. They came in ready to create the medicine to basically capitalize on a crisis that they blew out of proportion and partially manufactured themselves. When you identify with the mainstream, it's basically congruency. You know, there's no cognitive dissonance. It makes sense. This is part of the theory of positive disintegration, by the way. When you're in that situation, like you and society are one and the same, and it makes sense, you do not experience gaslights. You do not have gaslights. And if you do have any cognitive dissonance come up, you talk yourself into being wrong and you side with the gaslighters, right? It's kind of like Stockholm syndrome. This is why most people don't understand Like, what do you mean there's, like, what is this conspiracy that you say is happening? Like, what's wrong with you people? And it's like, it's not a conspiracy. It's recognition that a gaslight is happening. People are being preyed upon, and there's a codependent, narcissistic relationship taking place between people in positions of control and people who are, you know, regular people, regular citizens. You know, all the confusion where people are like, why can't you just like grow up and like get the thing? Like, what's wrong? Why are you so selfish? It's not about any of that. It's about being able to perceive social dynamics that are extremely dangerous and not wanting to be a part of it because it's dirty, dirty energy. That's all. I would like to tell you that the more shadow work that you do, the more relaxed you get and the more easy and simple life is. But that has not been my experience. And maybe I'm not doing a good job of selling my services right now, but my experience has been that I have become way more sensitive. I have become way more hypervigilant, which has been hard, because hypervigilance is hard to begin with, and then you start paying even closer attention, and you start seeing even more threats, and you start to realize how the whole entire world is unsafe. I mean, it's unsafe in a social sense, in an emotional sense. To have the perspective I have has nothing to do with selfishness, and it has nothing to do with naivety, because I'm not confused about illness. You know, like I'm not confused about the fact that illnesses happen. People get ill. It's possible for me to get ill in some way. However, I have so much I've taken so much responsibility in the realm of health that I do believe that I am exempt from having to take any sort of synthetic pharmaceutical medication ever again, period. And I definitely do think that luck and privilege play a role in what you're more likely to contract. And so I understand that. I understand that I'm in a position of very high privilege, and that's why I don't have to worry about as many things. I know it's not just all my awareness, it's also just pure luck. When coercion is happening, it's never just like a clean thing, you know? It's like, oh, coercion is happening, yeah, but it's like, it's good because like we're just trying to do the right thing. There's no such thing as like coercion for a good cause. Like, that's not a thing. There is no coercion for a good cause. You might have good intentions, but as we always say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So I'll stop rambling there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.